Your support helps us bring you programs you love. Go to wyomingpbs.org, click on Support, and become a sustaining member or an annual member. It's easy and secure. Thank you.
Cindy DeLancey has been at her post as president of the Wyoming Business Alliance for almost 1 year. Her role is to be Wyoming's premier business advocate and proponent, and she hopes to facilitate a growing, proactive, and inclusive business environment and climate for organizations big and small in the Cowboy State. Cindy DeLancey and the Wyoming Business Alliance, next on Wyoming Chronicle.
Funding for Wyoming Chronicle is provided in part by the Dragicevich Foundation, supporting the work of the Wyoming Women's Foundation.
And it's now our pleasure on Wyoming Chronicle to be joined by Cindy DeLancey. Cindy, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you.
Cindy, you're not quite a year on board with the Wyoming Business Alliance, and before we get into talking about that, let's learn about you. Give me a little bit of your background, if you would.
Well, thanks. I love living in Wyoming. I spent the first half of my life growing up on Long Island, New York. I was raised by a small business owner, so I can remember sitting around the kitchen table from the time that I was a kid, hearing about taxes and regulation and employees. And my dad was probably one of the most influential people in my life, and I learned so much about him. And when I came time to go to law school, I moved out west and came to the University of Wyoming and fell in love with a cowboy and bought a horse from him. And 16 years later, I still have the horse and still have the cowboy. So I must be doing something right.
And rodeo is one of your family hobbies.
It is, absolutely, yes. My husband was a rodeo competitor for LCCC and UW, and now my daughter is carrying on in her dad's footsteps, and we spent a lot of time in the pickup traveling around Wyoming and Colorado, going to different rodeos, and it's really been a fun family event for us to participate in together.
Well, that's kind of a good segue into your work, I think, with the Business Alliance, because now you have responsibilities for big towns, big business, small business, all over Wyoming. So how have you begun to learn about the needs of businesses, big and small, all over the state?
Well, being an entrepreneur myself, I feel that really keeping connected with the constituents that you just mentioned is so important. Business has so many shapes and sizes in Wyoming, and coming from Carbon County, my husband and I had several businesses over there. Now living in Cheyenne, him being self-employed and having our own business too, it really helps me stay connected with the needs from my background of having a business in maybe a smaller populated area to now being in Cheyenne. And really for me, what I've tried to do is just talk to people, just get out there, talk to my members, find out what's on their mind, hear what's working, hear their points of frustration, and just try to be that voice for businesses all across Wyoming, big and small.
So let's kind of go there just a little bit. Let's take the positive first. What's working in Wyoming? We hear, the state's maybe struggling a little bit, but that's primarily from what's happened with oil and gas and coal minerals. But what's working? What's the positive?
What I think is working is what we do best. We are the masters of the relationship in Wyoming. Our people are our best commodity, and we have such bright innovators. And this entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in every corner of Wyoming, in every big community, in every small community. We have people that are invested in Wyoming, wanting to move our state forward and trying to think of ways to create opportunities, not only to keep themselves here, to make a living, but for future generations to think about how can my children and their children be set up in the future to have businesses strong. So our people and our wildly creative spirit in Wyoming, I think, is really a positive, and I see that alive and well, and it's very exciting. Everywhere I go, I see that.
And now the challenges that you see on a day in and day out basis, are they different in the Cheyennes and the Sheridans and the Codys versus the Graybulls and the Lusks and the Wrights, the smaller communities?
I think yes and no is really the answer there, Craig.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. I mean, what I mean by that is there are some real challenges that impact us all in Wyoming. And for me, what I hear consistently is the uncertainty of having the federal government as our partner. In Wyoming, 50% of the lands are owned by the federal government and ultimately under federal regulation. And whether you're in the extraction industry or the tourism industry or the agriculture industry, the federal government is your partner. And we have wonderful people on the ground in Wyoming working in federal agencies, working with our industries, but these policies are set what feels like a million miles away from us. And some of the policies that are supported by our lawmakers as a body in DC aren't necessarily conducive to Wyoming. And that uncertainty of what those policies are is very troubling for businesses. Now, again, thankfully, we have such a strong delegation in Wyoming who recognizes our uniqueness and is continually being our voice in Washington, D.C. to help create a little bit more certainty for business. But that's a consistent theme of the uncertainty of how long is it going to take to permit a project? Am I going to have access to federal lands for grazing? Am I going to be able to have a permit, to have access for recreational outdoor opportunities in the recreation business? So that's what I mean by the yes, as far as consistency. And then the no is, yes, there are very unique challenges in communities around Wyoming related to availability of workforce. Again, just maintaining a business climate is very important, working with our local elected officials to ensure that we're maintaining a business-friendly environment. I think the state of Wyoming does a great job through the Business Council and the leadership of Sean Reese on attracting business to Wyoming, but we need to be mindful, and I think that a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to ensure that we send the signal to the rest of the world that Wyoming is open for business. And as we continue to communicate and work together, there's no challenge in Wyoming that we can't solve.
Cindy, I want to talk about workforce for just a moment. Fred Von Ahrens, the chairman of the Wyoming Business Alliance and the Wyoming Heritage Foundation, said that we should be preparing and encouraging K-12 students towards all career paths, not just the direction of a college degree. So when you're out and about in Wyoming, is there that concern that we may not be doing a good enough job relative to those who are pursuing maybe the non-college path in education and that need technical training to further their careers?
Craig, I think everyone in Wyoming thinks they're doing what's best for Wyoming, and that's one of the reasons why I just love being here. There's always room for improvement, though, and I think that even on a national level, this notion of the trades perhaps being reserved for folks that are not maybe equipped to go to college or capable for whatever reason to go to college, I reject that. I mean, in Wyoming, it takes all hands on deck. Our construction workers, our truck drivers, our pipe fitters, our electricians are equally, as valuable in our economy as our petroleum engineers or our hydrologists and geologists and, ag business people. It takes all hands on deck. And I think that that's really what Fred has spent so many years in his career, just being that voice for the trades and making sure that there's opportunity for everyone. Because in a state with our population, as I said, it takes all hands on deck to be successful. And one of the things that I truly love about Wyoming, which really separates us, I think, from our neighbors, and Wyoming is the one place where the impossible is possible. We can do anything here. And as far as, promoting this ability to make sure that we have a space for everyone, I think that's really what Fred's message is, that let's keep going. Let's bring business to the table. Let's have this conversation. Let's solve our problems instead of relying on maybe others to try to tell Wyoming what would work for us. We are so invested in this conversation about making sure that we have the right fit from the ground up.
For a long time, you're well aware of this conversations relative to diversity.
Yes.
You're well aware of the governor's Endow initiative.
Yes.
If I were to ask you to look forward in your crystal ball to Wyoming's economy 10, 15, 20 years down the road, what do you see relative to diversification that now has become important, but quite frankly has been hard to achieve in Wyoming?
It has been hard, and so many governors before have attempted this, and I really, really applaud the efforts of Governor Mead. He's assembled a team of some of the best and brightest and most talented that Wyoming has to offer. And looking forward, Craig, I think that Wyoming is going to look like a radically different place in the future. And truly what, excuse me, my vision of what I would hope Wyoming to be is the implementation of technology, not just in our existing economic drivers of the extraction industry, the tourism industry, and the agriculture industry, but having technology become our fourth or fit into that technology sector being one of our main economic drivers. We often hear Wyoming's economy referred to as the three-legged stool. And I've heard the governor speak about implementation, as I said, of technology into our existing industries, as well as this budding and wildly innovative and creative standalone economy as well. But turning that stool into a chair, having technology be that fourth leg in the chair is what I really envision. And it is so exciting to be up in the Jonah Center right now and to see the momentum and excitement around some of the cryptocurrency bills and the blockchain bills, and to have folks that are maybe on the cusp of their career, being innovators and entrepreneurs, partnering with maybe those at the end of their careers, just coming together, and this excitement in the air about what technology can offer. And some of the bold moves that Wyoming's making to put us on the map in this cryptocurrency, blockchain economy is wildly exciting. So looking forward in the future, I think that technology is going to play a huge role for our existing industries as well as our future industries.
So Cindy, that's a great segue into Wyoming Excels and the work that you're doing to advocate for computers in schools.
Yes, thank you. Wyoming Excels is such an exciting piece of the work that we do.
One of the programs of the Business Alliance.
It is.
Yeah.
It's one of the programs of under the Wyoming Heritage Foundation, actually.
Okay.
Wyoming Excels is a partnership with the Daniels Fund and Wyoming Heritage Foundation. Amber Ash is the executive director of the Wyoming Excels program. And really what we're seeking to accomplish here is bringing the business community and the education community together to make sure that we have a stable and ready workforce and a prepared workforce for the future. By bringing employers together to sit at the table with educators to have a conversation about how can we position Wyoming now so we're ready for the jobs of the future. And truly, computer science, again, is where we're going. Being able to have the technology capabilities to be able to program and to work in that technology field, if we can offer our students that leg up right now, Wyoming will be so well positioned to embrace that technology going forward. And if we get this done, again, this will be another first Wyoming to put us on the map of what we're doing.
Another program that you focus on is leadership.
Absolutely.
In the Cowboy State and through Leadership Wyoming, a program that's familiar to some but not to all.
Certainly. Leadership Wyoming is so wonderful and so near and dear to my heart. I had the privilege to go through the class in 2010, and it was life-changing for me. I loved it so much. And what Leadership Wyoming is it's a program that was established in 1999 as a partnership between the University of Wyoming and, again, the Wyoming Heritage Foundation to start developing the tools that our future and emerging leaders need to learn about Wyoming, to embrace stepping forward, to joining the conversation, to learning how to be effective in community and self, and to just be able to help promote civility and conversations, and that it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. And so at this point now in the program's history, there's been over 700 graduates of the program, and the program's going strong. It's run by Mandy Fable, who has recently come on as the executive director of Leadership Wyoming. She's doing great work, and we're really looking forward to making the next class selection in the very near future.
And I would encourage people who are watching, if they have an interest in Wyoming and a desire to participate, that Leadership Wyoming, it's truly a great opportunity for those that can take advantage. It's a commitment.
It is. It's a commitment. But what isn't? Time is probably our most precious commodity, and to be able to take the time to learn about this wonderful place that we get to call home is incredibly rewarding. And everything is covered from going down in the depths of the Trona mine to learning about what's happening in healthcare and education and the creative economy, the arts. It's just fabulous. And going back to that resource that I talked about that I think is probably one of Wyoming's strongest assets is the people. When you start the class, you leave with 45 new best friends who are all over Wyoming, that any community that you're in, you can pick up the phone and reconnect with someone over a cup of coffee and hear what's happening. And that aspect of the networking relationship is incredibly valuable as well.
Back to an overview, Cindy, of business, the Wyoming Business Alliance. It's not new. It's been around for a while. And for people that aren't aware of its history, give us a little bit.
Sure. The Wyoming Business Alliance was established in 1979, really with the goal of being that premier voice for business in Wyoming. And it's I love focusing on the word alliance because it has members from all of our different industries in Wyoming, from the construction industry to the healthcare industry, to CEOs of large companies, the extraction industry, the agriculture industry, the banking and finance industry. It's a way for people to come together and to have a voice and to be part of the process, to start looking at policy, to do some analysis on how to keep Wyoming's business and regulatory climate strong. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization that, again, those friendships and those networking opportunities and the ability to learn from each other as well as give back to Wyoming, I think that our members find very rewarding.
How is the Alliance supported? In other words, fiscally, how does it support itself to allow you to do your work?
Thank you for that question. The Alliance is supported purely by its members through membership dues.
Cindy, last year at the Governor's Business Forum, which we'll talk about in just a minute, you said that with the dynamics of Wyoming's industries changing, we must focus on innovation and fostering our entrepreneurial spirit and broaden fiscal opportunities in our traditional industries. We've talked a little bit about that, but broaden that for us, if you will.
Sure, absolutely.
What were you thinking?
I was thinking in the sense that the world is changing around us, Craig, and Wyoming needs to change with it. And again, being prepared and ready for the future is something that I think most business leaders are always looking towards. They're very committed to planning and to making sure that we're ready and that the resources are available to be successful. And we're spending a lot of time talking about making sure that we have government running as efficiently as we can, and also creating the opportunities for the private sector innovation to really lead the way. Some of the examples that's happening there is the wonderful work that's being done with the University of Wyoming and the private sector. When you look at some of the world-class research that Dr. Mohammed Piri and his team are doing over at the School of Energy Resources. When you look at the university stepping forward with the brand new tourism degree that's being led, when you look at the wonderful work being done by Dean Gailey and the College of Agriculture, it's that partnership, those relationships that I spoke about earlier really come into play as far as figuring out how to position ourselves to lead. In Wyoming, we're leaders. We're cowboys and cowgirls. We live by the code of the West. That's how we make our decisions. And to be able to create an environment where we are not afraid to try something new. And if we fail, we learn from it. We pick ourselves up, we dust ourselves off, and we move forward. And those are the types of conversations that I think are essential to continue to occur. And when you have 600 people assembled together at the Governor's Business Forum to be able to talk about what's new, what are you hearing, what are other parts of the country doing, how can Wyoming do it better? That's what's really exciting to me to see.
Is it better or different? Is Wyoming trying to set itself apart or to just be better? Because you hear that other states are also requiring computer science of their students, that other states are also now getting interested in cryptocurrency and blockchain legislation.
Yep.
Is it Wyoming's goal to be different or just to be better, or are they both?
I think Wyoming business leaders want to do what's best for Wyoming.
In other words, how can Wyoming set itself apart?
How can we set ourselves apart? I think that we trust our instincts and we follow our gut in Wyoming. We have a good sense of having our finger on the pulse is what's going to work for us. And with that being our guiding principles, I don't see how we can fail. We have leaders at every level, whether it's from municipal mayors all the way up to the governor's office and to our delegation in Washington. They're focused on what's best for Wyoming. And we know what maybe works in Wyoming might not work in Florida or might not work in, Tennessee. And to have their finger on the pulse of trying to create policy to keep us business friendly and to be the envy of the rest of the world, to say, come to Wyoming, that's where I think that our folks are really focused on, is creating a climate that's second to none, and that people can come and enjoy our wonderful custom and culture and quality of life, and being successful and be able to provide a living for themselves, contributing to the economy, and also providing opportunity for future generation is really what I view and what that means by being the best and setting us forward.
Sure. When you look at what seems to be important to millennials or our younger folks,
I have 2 of them at home.
Just graduating from college, yeah, and my kids as well. Some would say that a lot of things that urban environments have to offer now is what's really attractive, and that's a struggle for many towns in Wyoming, even the largest communities. Some urban planning that is focused on things that are important to millennials, but that's tough. Is that a concern of yours? I mean, we all say we want to attract those younger kids right back to Wyoming, but it's a challenge.
It is a challenge, and that's where I am really excited to hear Endow and other business leaders talking about this creative economy, the arts, the music, just the ability for culture opportunities in Wyoming is really moving, those quality of life aspects. I mean, we all love the wonderful outdoors and all that it has to offer.
Yeah, you think of the music scene, and what dings your bell in Wyoming? Well, I don't know.
Well, there's really lots happening.
There's some pockets,
yes.
and there is more. There's absolutely no question.
And I think that there's more and more every day. And again, Wyoming's wide open. We could do anything here. And so for people to come and sing in a band or open an art gallery, or you look at someone as talented as CJ Box, who could live anywhere in the world. He chooses to live in Wyoming. And to have that ability to bring other people that are committed to that creative economy, Wyoming is a wonderful space for that, because we are accepting. We do like to enhance our culture as far as in our communities. And it's wide open. There's room for everyone in Wyoming.
Let's go back to the Governor's Business Forum. You're already working towards next year.
That's right.
What's on the menu?
Well, I think we're going to springboard off of some of the efforts that Endow is working on, and to try to take a deeper dive with conversation about some of the priorities focused around Endow. I'd like to continue this conversation about technology and cryptocurrency, and just really fleshing that out a little bit more for folks to get their mind around what that is, and again, how does that set Wyoming apart and really enhance our economy. I also would like to have a conversation about workforce and diversity in workforce. I've been chatting with some folks maybe about the idea of having a panel on ways to try to make some accommodations to get some more of our maybe disabled population into the workforce and in the economy. So we're wide open right now. November feels like a long way away, but not really. And just right now, just brainstorming lots of ideas and working very collaboratively with the governor and his team as far as what the right fit for the forum's going to be this year.
Cindy, we have a couple minutes left in our conversation here, and as we're filming this, the Wyoming legislature is winding down on its budget session, which is making the 2-year now blueprint, if you will,
yes.
For how the state is going to function, at least from the state's perspective.
Yes.
And I've watched you visit with legislators from every corner of Wyoming every day. And when you visit with the lawmakers and the decision makers in Wyoming, you get a lot of different perspectives.
You do.
What concerns do you hear from I guess, the change agents, the lawmakers, the people who are decision makers and influencers?
I don't really necessarily know if I classify them as concerns, Craig, but the consistent theme that I hear from everyone is they want to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing for Wyoming, and figuring out what that is, and how do we position ourselves to provide opportunity? And that's where it's just so exciting to see some of the tough, conversations being taken on. What do we do about air service? How do we promote our agricultural products in an international market? I'm so pleased to know that they've taken time out of the budget session to start having those conversations on policy that are really essential to propel Wyoming forward, for not just the next 2 years, but beyond that. And that common theme of what is the business community saying? How can we help you? How can we create an environment that's going to want to make people come to Wyoming? Again, it is a little bit competitive when you look at other areas, especially with tourism. How can we position Wyoming to be number one when someone's thinking about relocating or bringing their business? And so knowing that is front and center on our lawmakers' mind, give me great pleasure to know that they're focused on the right things. And also, again, a lot of attention is being paid to education and making sure that we have opportunities to have our next generation of workers be prepared and ready.
Sure. Final thought, Cindy. I mean, Wyoming does have challenges, challenges with healthcare, education that we talked about, some of those other things. But you're high energy here. You're optimistic about Wyoming's future.
I am.
What excites you the most? Is it on the small business end, or is it on these big news things that we want to hear about the big manufacturing company? What's really driving you right now?
All of the above. I love it all. And what I find so exciting to me is the engagement of our rural communities. We have, as a country, so much of our population is centered in some very large metropolitan areas. But the fact that we are now at a time where the rural population's voice is probably, just as loud, if not louder, on issues that impact rural America. And we have it even in amongst our state. And to just have that connectivity with our, rural businesses and rural citizens, to be able to find that right mix of what is going to be, successful in the future. It's going to take, as I said earlier, all hands on deck. We need the small businesses. We need the sole proprietors. We need the large companies like that we've seen decide to make Wyoming their home. And if we can find that right mix and making sure that the door's open to all, that is what is really exciting, because we have no limits and there's going to be great things ahead for Wyoming.
Well, as the state places new emphasis on diversity and diversifying its economy, it'll be interesting, Cindy, to continue to follow your work, the success of Endow, and the work that the legislature's actually doing right now.
Well, I look forward to catching up with you again in the future, Craig, and hopefully my predictions will be right that Wyoming's going to hit a home run.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Love to be in the bleachers when that happens.
Thank you, Craig.
Cindy, thank you for joining us, and thank you very much for joining us on Wyoming Chronicle.